Innovation is a huge topic for everyone doing thought leadership. How do you innovate? How do you know what works and what doesn't? How do you manage the engagement and effectiveness of the content that you produce? Well, my guest today is Mattia Bagherini, communication coordinator of Carnegie Europe, an organization doing a lot in terms of innovation when it comes to communication and marketing. With him, we're going to explore the different methodologies that they have used, the different formats they have been exploring with. This episode is massively inspirational for anyone trying to innovate the way in which they communicate their insight. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of In Evidence. Mattia, I'm very happy to have you here.
Hi, Federico. Pleasure to be with you.
Before we start, why don't you tell the others a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Just to introduce myself very briefly, I'm the Senior Communications Coordinator at Carnegie Europe. That is the European office of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, an international think tank, international affairs think tank that produces important analysis on a range of geographic areas and topics. So my job basically is to get our experts' research where it needs to go. Among many other things, I manage the publications pipeline, so everything that is in our website and our social channels, and I also write the different bits that accompany our content on the website and articles and mailings. I also handle the relationship with our international outlets like New York Times, Reuters, the Financial Times, BBC, and finally I produce also a podcast that is called Europe Inside Out, which was launched in 2022. And yeah, so my job at its core is to take rigorous analysis and bring it to a wide audience without simplifying too much, but building a bridge between the people who hold that knowledge and the people who would normally be left out of it. So it's a difficult balance, especially while trying to be as impartial as possible. But that's exactly what gives me the satisfaction on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, you said something very interesting there, because obviously, say the area where you guys are active is geopolitics, which is becoming massively popular these days. And you said like your task is really to make it popular, to make it reach as a wider audience as wide as possible without making it banal. So how much would you say it is an increasingly difficult challenge these days, with more and more people wanting to know what you do, but also try to keep the scientific rigor of your think tank?
Yeah, I think that what we are really good at as an institution, as an organization, is that people recognize our independence. So basically, we don't take political stances, but what we do is to bring like rigorous fact-based research. And so this is something that really stands out at the end of the day. And of course, you can see that if you bring research on very heated topics, for example, Israel and Gaza, or Armenia, Azerbaijan, there are always people that, of course, criticize whatever stance you take or you don't take. But of course, the important thing is really to have some fact-based research and rigorous analysis, especially from experts that, for example, in our case, were former ambassadors or people that are really well known in the area.
Okay, interesting. So I'm hearing two things. On one side, there is like the reputation of your brand, which already ensures the fact that you guys are known as an institution producing impartial reports, not taking stand, but also it seems that by leveraging the gravitas of your audience, of your guests, and the specific kind of analysis that you do, you're also able to ensure that the rigor of your study kind of keeps constant in every publication that you release. Curious to know, though, like obviously it's not always easy, right, to show how many sources, for example, are backing the communication, the content that you produce. How do you manage to do it in the era of like very short and quick communication, Instagram or TikTok, for example? Is it something that you're trying to do, or are you trying to take more the slow approach to it?
Yeah, so as an organization, we are not a media outlet. Okay. So we don't follow the news like in an instant, like some, for example, the BBC, Reuters, or other outlets do. Our process is a bit different because we work with the headquarters in Washington, where that, of course, edits all the research that we do. And so there is a process that has many steps in it. So it's not really happening in an instant. It takes usually 3 weeks, 4 weeks for a piece to go live from when we receive it. And so we tend to give recommendations for a medium to long term rather than a short term. But to overcome this, we also created a blog in 2012. It's called Strategic Europe. And so that's where we publish twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And there we try to follow the news and be a bit more opinionated. So, of course, sources, when you give an opinion, matter a little bit less. So, of course, it has to be fact-based, but you can be a bit more bold and give a stronger opinion, I can say.
It's interesting. You said we are not a media company. I actually think that every company who does thought leadership is a media company. And also when you look at the production, right? So you're completing the reports with also, for example, blog, podcast, but that's a personal opinion, of course. You obviously try not to engage in news, even though I can imagine that engaging more and more in news is probably what helps a think tank being more, spread more their work and also try to create more engagement with their audience. And that's probably an interesting topic to discuss with you, because it seems like you're tipping your toes into the water of following the news and say your opinion when it comes to that. Try to couple that with the influence that you want to create with your scientific work. How would you say influence and impact go hand in hand?
Yeah, I think you captured really well what we try to do. We try as a communications team to also use clips on YouTube, on Instagram, carousels, infographics on especially LinkedIn. That works well. So we try to take our content and make the most of it. Also to widen our readership and listenership. Also with products like the podcast. But as you said, these are all things that we do for visibility. So it's like the quantitative side of it. But what matters the most at the end of the day for us, and it's not the same for every organization, is the qualitative side of things. And so we try to make an impact, to have some policymakers discuss with our experts and take their ideas. And so that is something that is very hard to grasp and to count, because of course, by definition, it is not something you can count. But I think that we have to balance how we can reach these people and how we can reach also a wider audience. But we have to do strategic communications and targeted communications just to make sure that people in the European Parliament, the European Commission, or in the national capitals call our expert and say, okay, we have to set up a meeting to discuss this issue. Mm-hmm. And that's actually something that happened in our headquarters in Washington, because one expert wrote a paper on the opportunities for peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And 2 days later, someone from the US administration called and requested a meeting. And 2 months later, a draft of peace agreement was signed in August 2025, if I remember correctly. And of course, you cannot say that our expert was the architect of it, but because as him, like they call another 100 people. But that's important that at the end of the day, you make your content accessible to policymakers that have 2 minutes to grasp your idea, and they don't have 2 hours to read a 200 pages report.
Yeah, no, it's a very, I think you gave a very clear example of how, say, impact is created at the end, how difficult it is also to measure. You can obviously have an idea about, so what was the role played by your activity and the content that you produce. I was wondering, is there anything that you do in terms of trying to innovate the way in which you measure influence and impact?
Yeah, so there are 2 things that we try to do. Something is more related to new products, new formats. And as I said, there is a 200 pages paper, and we try to make it accessible and not just to people in academia. And so we do like brief summaries of the piece, and we share it with our contacts on in the European institutions and in other channels. But also what we try to do is something more. We try to be more impactful. Another example that I can give is about a project that we had on Iran, well before what happens these days, of course.
Yep.
And it was back in 2021, if I can remember correctly. And what we did was to bring into the European Parliament some voices that were not present at the moment. And it was the Iranian civil society. And so, of course, in that occasion, we didn't give solution or recommendation. We just put a question into the room, and we let the two words speak to each other. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there you cannot control what happens. You can just build a base for it and then see the results. And so I think that is like the dichotomy that you have to balance in a think tank work. Both use all your channels, all your formats to vehiculate the idea. So putting people at the same table and let them discuss about the topics. For example, we also organize dinners between policymakers from different institutions that maybe they don't talk to each other. And so they have an informal way of discussing a topic that are not recorded, so they can speak freely. And so I think you have to be really creative in this endeavor.
Yeah. And it seems like there is still a huge role for qualitative measurement of impact, right? But I'm wondering, is there also space for a quantitative measurement of impact? And do you see any change? Is it like getting more, or is it still something very marginal?
I think there is a big space in both areas, as you said. And in the quantitative sphere, I guess it's really you have to check what is your audience, what they prefer to do, and then you have also to expand to the audience that you didn't reach before. And so that's why, for example, we created our podcast, and we try to do something to innovate, to do something more, to try new social media channels, Blue Sky, Reddit, and this kind of platforms. And so I think there is no like a solution for everyone. And all the organization, all the NGOs, all the think tanks have their own space. But what you can do is to experiment and to check at the end of the day what worked, what didn't work. And if something didn't work, you just go on and move with another project. But if this worked, you have to try to make this happen.
Yeah, then you have a winner on which you can expand. It seems
it's
like,
more
by
like
the way,
it's more like to catch all the birds with all the stone that you have at your disposal.
No, so you are trying to create a ordinate sequence of tests that you're adding to the traditional communication channels, right? So whereas traditionally it was more like research and then report, and then from that report you're trying to influence the public debate, it almost seems like you added marketing funnel at the beginning of the activity, more like the awareness activity, where the advantage of this funnel is that you have an easier way to measure awareness. But then when there is higher engagement, and then when, say, at the very end of the funnel, so where really decisions are made, then still the qualitative part of it is, and the traditional way of looking at it is still the common practice. Do I say it correctly?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that, for example, our director comes to us and says, oh, I saw that this piece got X number of clicks, so I'm very happy about it. But at the same time, she comes to us saying, oh, someone from the commission called me saying that we publish a very good piece. So it's always about this balance, and you cannot escape this.
Is there a space for the 300 pages report?
No, of course. There is a space.
Okay, that's a good thing. Right, for the ones
that is our core. So basically, that is what we used to do, and we still do. And the thing is that we try to simplify that. And so to draw the attention to the big report, you have to create a simpler and shorter thing. For example, the blog always uses this to draw the attention to the bigger report, and then they are going to read like more in detail what they can do, recommendations, solutions, and so on.
Interesting. It really fits with the idea of creating smaller or snappier content. Is not that engagement should stop there, but it's to help the audience filter what's interesting, so that if there is something interesting, they can engage with the primary source, which is the report, and the more complete piece of content. I would like to dive deeper into what is for you. Obviously, you do a lot of innovation. What is your approach to innovation? How do you decide what to try and what not? What works, what doesn't?
Yeah, so we are a global think tank, so we have centers all over the world, so we have to coordinate between each other. What we try to do is to pitch an idea and then to get the approval, and then what happens always is you try, and if it works, they say, okay, I saw that this works, so continue doing that. And if it doesn't work, you just stop. Also because of internal resources and everything. And
Wait a second.
but
Let me stop you here because
yeah.
that's the internal process, obviously, right? But even before you say you tried the idea, so let's say you are Mattia and you want to test a new idea, which could be a specific event, for example, or a podcast, or being active on a new social media. How do you decide for yourself what idea to test and what's the approach to testing?
Yeah, so I regularly follow like not only the news but or other think tanks, other centers, other people that try to innovate. And so if I like the idea, I think about it, and I'm like, why don't we try it?
Okay,
It drew my attention, so maybe it works.
there may be something to it.
And then you discuss with the team, and maybe they have the similar approach, and they also have different ideas, just about like brainstorming and making it work. And of course then you have to tailor it to what you do. You cannot just bring something that a daily podcast into your work, because you don't have the capacity to do that. But you can tailor it to what you do, and then you try to mix different approaches. And so I think that's our way that we do things.
Okay. Well, have you ever looked at innovation frameworks?
No, actually,
Okay.
for example, I saw that there is an institution called Brookings that did database that you can, is basically an interactive map that can give you the idea of where the federal expenses of the US go. So you can actually fact check in real time what the politicians say, and we got that idea from this basically, and then we built something like that on our own, and we saw that worked really well. We did it for our project on democracy, and so this is called the Global Protest Tracker. And so basically we tracked all the anti-governative protests around the world. And so it's an interactive map. You can see the month, the year, the country, what happened, and what they were protesting against. And so we saw that we took that idea and then we used it ourselves, and it worked really well. So this is a positive example of what we were discussing before.
Yeah, nice. It sounds very interesting. So you saw something that worked. You can then try to repackage the widget based on the content of your research. And then you said it worked. Let's say, what did you see? Like very high engagements with the tool, for example? How did you see that working?
Yeah, so this, of course, was meant to be to a wider audience and not to our usually like policymakers or academia, but it was mostly for journalists and the general public. But we saw great engagement, a lot of requests to use our data, and so I think that at the end of the day is something that worked really well.
Cool. And one of the things that I noticed is that your role seems of kind of like serving a triangle of feeding society with the research that comes from your own institution. Then you have the role of media and journalists that come to you, and then there's the public as well. Curious to know, like in this push and pull, how much of that is more like internal to external or external to internal? And is there any time the public coming to you as a think tank? Is that role, or is it always filtered by the media?
Yeah, so I think it's a circle, because every time, like, for example, there are media that reach out to me asking, can I have a chat with this author because I read the piece? Or the other way around. Sometimes I think there is a very good piece and I pitch it to the media and say, do you want to have a chat with our scholar? Or, for example, we receive in our general inbox many comments to our pieces that maybe we distribute through our mailing list. And so I think is a mix of everything, and there is not something that goes just one way, but it's a two-way thing. And of course, also we have a new series of event that is called Europe Head to Head. And so we have a YouTube event, a live event, and then people are encouraged to chat and to share their question through our YouTube chat. And so then the moderator, that is usually our director, Rosa Balf, picks the questions and asks it to the guests. So it's like this kind of interaction that is really useful.
Yeah, interesting. So it seems like you're really trying to kind of break the boundaries between, or like the filter between the insights that you create and how they are perceived by the end public.
Yeah, so it's a way to bring like the individual to the higher sphere of influence and policy making. And so if you have a question, you have a space where to ask that.
Cool. Well, we talked a lot about think tanks communication. Now we talked about breaking the boundaries between you and the end public. What are really the general trends that you observe in the industry?
Yeah, so I think that we are all going mostly the same way. We all try to innovate. At the same time, we try to have influence on the people that at the end of the day take the decisions. But there is a trend of trying to reach also a wider audience. For example, I'm witnessing it in Italy, in my country. There is a think tank that I follow very closely that is called Istituto Affari Internazionali. And I really like their work because I find in Italy there is quite some discontent with international politics and also some distance. When I talk to people, it's harder to get a personal idea, but they always follow, the television and what's on. And I think the work of Istituto Affari Internazionali is really interesting as they try to shape the conversation. They try to give the idea that international politics matter, and it's very important to follow that as well.
What do you think they're doing differently than the rest?
I think they inserted themselves in a space that was basically free, because there are a lot of think tanks in Italy that are a bit more institutionalized. I think about ISPI or COE or this kind of limes, and they try to be both institutionalized, professional, and reach policymakers, but also reach a younger and wider public. And I think that there was a big space, and they understood that, and they filled it in.
Interesting, because then what made the difference, it seems, is not what they do, but really like the niche that they occupied, and also just like the kind of audience that they're addressing.
Yeah, I agree with you on this.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to understand based on the things that you said. I think it has been a very interesting conversation so far, and then kudos to us for not mentioning AI for the first 20-25 minutes, right? Which is a great one. I would be interesting to know if among the trends and the changes you see, are you seeing AI shaping anything in your sector?
Yeah, sure. So we measure our metrics with the different systems, and we see that many people are reaching our research through AI, and this is something that really we are witnessing since, like, I guess 6 months. And so 4 or 5% of our audience reaches us through these new tools. And also we have of course an institutional AI policy, so not to use AI to draft content, because we try to be, of course, as how can I say, we have to write our own research, and but of course using AI to help you is something that is not a taboo, I think. And if it can help you at the end of the day, is always, especially to summarize a piece that is like 300 pages. And if you want just to have an idea to see if it's interesting, I think it's a good way to do that. And but also we implemented systems to catch if something was written by AI, and so we try to be really aware of it.
Okay, I'm curious to know if AI nowadays can write a report of 300 pages like in the snap of a finger. Do you see this eroding either your credibility or the role of your research?
Yeah, actually, I think not, because what gives our reputation to be that solid is the human touch of it. So who writes the publication is the former ambassador of the European Union to Turkey, and so he knows everything about Turkey. He knows everything about what happens inside the country, outside the country. And so people, especially policymakers that read that, know that this person knows a lot about the country and knows how to solve the problems, and gives like creative solutions about things. What AI cannot do is to actually come up with new ideas that work also on a political level. They can be as analytical as they want, but this human touch will never be present with the AI-based research.
I think it's a very interesting insight, because then you are saying that your way to counter AI and the potential lack of relevance that comes with it is really the fact that your authors or researchers have some level of personal branding that make them stand above what AI could produce. I think it's a very interesting insight. Whereas a lot of think tanks, research institution kind of have a bit of protection to it. So you still see the name of the institution way more prominent than the researchers behind that. Am I hearing well that it seems like you're tending to attach a lot of importance also to who is writing the piece? You see it also in, for example, media. I don't know if you ever read The Economist, for example, but in the last months, they have more and more columns written by people that are more identifiable with their face and so on. Is it a trend you're seeing in the media as well?
Yeah, I think this is a way that both media and think tanks are trying to counter AI. So personalized the content and give a face to the text. And I think this is something important in our organization, because all our experts are working in the field since 20, 30 years. And there is this thing that reputation comes both for the organization, but because the organization picks the right people. Mm-hmm. And I think this also comes with the social media channels. You see downgrade of engagement of organizational channels, but an increase of interaction if the expert itself publishes something. And so you can see that that this is a trend, and we encourage our scholars to post more and to engage more with the audience. And also, of course, because we saw this kind of detachment with institutional channels, and an increase of I think people like to see someone actually saying something, and especially with the Instagram reels or YouTube clips, I think this works very well.
It's a very interesting insight, because often what you see, or like traditionally, institutions really want to come across as like, we are the institution, and the reputation comes from our personal name, from the decades or centuries of history. That's also true for universities, medias, as we said. Whereas what you're saying is that now there is really a reverse in the trend, where it's really more the role of the individual, which is not only counterintuitive, but it seems really the opposite of what companies, institutions have been trying to do so far, because it always seemed like personal branding made the institution feel more amatorial to some extent, whereas that's not your case, or you are a proponent of the opposite approach.
Yeah, of course. I think that what we're trying to do is that we already have their institutional reputation, because we were founded in 1910. So we have a long history, and people know us. And now we're trying to do something more. And of course, like, the importance of our reputation is that, for example, our research written by who goes through several steps that reassures the public that there is the needed quality. And so there are many people that work on that draft, and not just one person. So it's a bit of, we have this big reputation, but also we try to personalize it a little bit more. And I think it's a mix that is really working.
It's a combination that is working.
Yeah.
Hey, Mattia, one last question, because we talked about AI. Curious to know if you also mentioned events. So I'm curious to know if events are also part of the mix for you, as kind of like a response to a world which seems more and more digital, but also this digital world that we're creating seems more and more fake, or easier to fake. Are events part of that response?
Yeah, I think events are a really important component of our work. And of course, everything changed after the COVID pandemic, because we tried to do more events, hybrid events and or virtual events, and this we saw that was really successful, because especially an institution with a global reach can reach all parts of the world just with an event held online, and not just in a room in Brussels where just people in Brussels can be present. And
Yeah,
so
and
now
sorry for interrupting you. And now is it still now very heavy on digital, or is there kind of a shift back?
Yeah, no. What we do now is we have hybrid events, and so we have people in the room, but at the same time, the event is streamed online, and so
Okay.
we see that many people are present during the event digitally. And what we do is a mix of these public-facing events, but what works the most in the end is private events. We have roundtables with policymakers, especially after a report comes out. We invite policymakers from different institutions, from civil society, from other national governments, and we put them all around the table and we discuss the issue. And there is where, at the end of the day, the ideas are shared. There are heated arguments, and I think like we now are doing, as I said before many times, probably in this podcast, a mix of the two. But that is my takeaway. Always try to mix like private and like formal conversation with informal ones.
Very interesting. Well, Mattia, I want to thank you a lot for the insight that you shared. I think it was extremely valuable. We touched a lot of different points, how you guys are trying to do innovation, how you open up to the requests that you hear from civil society. And I found it also especially interesting, your response as an organization to AI, which has been to double down on the role of individuals, which is actually not eroding your credibility, but adding to it. So it has been a brilliant conversation. For the ones who would like to stay in contact and hear more about the research that you guys do, what's the best way to stay in contact?
Yeah, so of course you can follow our work on our website at Carnegie Europe, and also follow us on social media. We have a mailing list that you can subscribe to, and you can find it on the website. And I think that we can be in contact if you like to.
That's the best way. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Mattia.
Thank you. Very interesting to be here.